Good morning, everybody. Natalie Kimchi Lab, Spirit and Coffee. Cup of coffee here. Yada, yada, yada. Huda, huda, huda. Hada, hada, hada. Okay, let's see. I'll wait for the invite for my Spirit and Coffee to see who's on Facebook. Oh, there it is. Let's see. Can I hear myself? Test, 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 test. Yeah, it's working. Okay, let's get started. Say good morning to me on Facebook. If you get on here and I don't say good morning to you or don't say hi to you, it's because I don't see you. And my podcasters, I can see them. So I will say good morning to them when I see them. Anywho, let's get started. I have been reading, and I do need to update my podcast, Podbean, to give credit to the book that I'm reading so that everybody knows what I'm reading, and that you guys know that I'll be reading from the book. Now, this may change. Sometimes I go off on tangents on other things. However, this is what I'm going to be reading going forward, because I feel like we're at a time where this is critical information, so important. I feel like it's going to help you guys get through some very difficult things that may be happening in your life. As we know, it's just a crazy time. Things are crazy. And so let's just help each other out. Okay. So it's called Healing Through Dark Emotions, the wisdom of grief, fear, and despair. And it's by Miriam Greenspan. Okay. And we started with the introduction yesterday. And I started off with a quote that was here. It says, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that is the truth. That is the shedding of the light into the dark to illuminate. It is when we allow the subconscious to rise just above into the conscious mind, to give ourselves enough awareness to look at it and to say, okay, it exists. Now, how do I transmute this energy? How do I transform this energy? How do I shift the energy that's surfacing from those dark places of our mind? Okay, so heal us. Okay, so I'm going to start with the opening paragraph. Heal us, O Lord, that we may be healed. Praise Trevine, the milkman in The Fiddler of the Roof. In other words, he adds, with his knack for humor in the face of misery, God sends us the cure. The sickness we've got already. God sends us the cure. We've already got the sickness. Okay, the sickness being the ego mind, or the idea that we're separated, or the idea that we are not interconnected in some way. So that is the sickness. But God sends us the cure. The cure being that we are one, we are loved, we are all interconnected. Okay, like Trevine, we all suffer and search for the remedy. We turn to God and men, doctors, priests, gurus, talk shows, hosts, searching for relief, recovery, redemption, oblivion, anything that will put an end to our emotional pain. We pay psychotherapists to cure it. We take Prozac to mute it, seek counsel from religious to extort us to rise above it, read inspirational books to overcome it, join recovery programs and self-help groups to cope with it, spend millions of dollars to escape it, use alcohol, drugs, food, work, possessions, sex, entertainment, and all of the techno toys we can get to distract ourselves from it. Okay, that is powerful. Okay, I want to read that again. Okay, we pay. Okay, so let's see, we suffer and we search for the remedy. We suffer and search for it. So we're in the suffering of this illusion that we're separated, right? Good morning, Athena. And then we're looking for the remedy. How do I remedy myself? How do I become whole? And we pay, right? We search from searching for relief, recovery, redemption, oblivion, anything that will put an end to our emotional pain. We paid psychotherapists to cure it, take Prozac to mute it, seek counsel from religious that exhort us to rise above it, read inspirational books to overcome it, join recovery programs and self-help groups to cope with it, spend millions of dollars to escape it, use alcohol, drugs, food, possessions, sex, entertainment, and all the techno toys we can get to distract ourselves from it. In other words, we are looking to distract ourselves from our emotional pain. We literally will do anything not to have to suffer the pain and anguish that we go through, the suffering of the mind. And we will pay over and over and over again. Even in coaching. And now here's the difference. And here's why I love life coaching. And here's why I am constantly telling people, if you need support, please come and see me as a coach. With coaching, I don't want people to be dependent on me. In fact, that's not even the point of coaching. The point of coaching is to get people to recognize that they have the power within them and teach them how to find the answers within themselves. Teach them how to heal or overcome those deep, dark things within us that we don't know how to overcome. Eventually, you won't even need a coach. That's typically what should happen. You shouldn't need a life coach. If you continue to go to your therapist and it's been 20 years and you're at the same therapist, well, I'm going to tell you something. You're just paying money for what? To talk about the same patterns and stories? I'm not saying therapy doesn't work. I'm not saying counsel doesn't work. But what I love about the model of coaching is that it empowers you to empower yourself. It teaches you to empower yourself. It teaches you that you have the answers within you. And then every once in a while, you might need somebody to support you again. I go long periods without getting coaching because I'm able to coach myself. How do I coach myself? Asking myself powerful questions, leading myself down the road and being able to accept the suffering, right? Surrender to it, but then ask myself powerful questions to lead me through it. Not necessarily saying, I want to numb this out. I'm just going to distract myself from it. I literally have given up drugs, alcohol, everything. Not easy because it numbs out the pain in our minds. It allows us to refocus somewhere else. And then we're like, well, we don't want to deal with this pain. So I'm just going to go drink tonight. And that's what I used to do, right? I was an alcoholic at one point in my life. And I did it to what? To avoid the fact that I wasn't living my true potential. That's what I knew. And I was causing myself more misery and suffering because I wasn't following my spiritual path. And I knew that. For you, it may be something different. The suffering may be coming from you not following your greatest potential, your greatest dreams. Mine was spiritual in nature always. And I was numbing it out because I just felt like I wasn't worthy enough to be doing it. Okay. When it comes to dark emotions, we all experience suffers. We all experienced sufferers, grief, despair. These are the sufferers, I guess. Grief, despair, and fear are human birthright as much as joy, wonder, and love. There is no life without loss, and therefore no life without grief. There is no life without vulnerability, and therefore no life without fear. So long as we live in a world where terror, violence, environmental degradation, injustice, and scarcity exist, despair will find its unwelcome way into our hearts and souls. So again, we are not going to ever separate from the fear and all of these despair and grief and all that. It's part of this three-dimensional time space that we exist in. Now, we can transcend that through our own understanding of these principles and understanding how to overcome the grief, right? How do we work with it? Or maybe it's not even overcoming. Maybe it's working with to allow ourselves to transform the energy. This book is really powerful. So it has a lot of important information. Okay. There are, these are the worst feelings and they are part of everyday life. When I call them dark, I don't mean that they are bad, unwholesome, or pathological. I mean that they I mean that as a culture, we have kept these emotions in the dark, shameful, secret, and unseen. And as a result, we tend, for the most part, to shun them. But the emotions that we reject and suppress can become dark in an altogether different sense, like a rich, fertile soil from which unexpected flowers can blossom. So, in other words, when we keep them in the dark, if we don't shed light on them, if we're not allowing ourselves to understand these things, they are going to bloom anyway. They're going to bloom in some way. But now we're not really looking at how they're being fertilized, what's being fertilized within the soil, because we're not digging it up, right? We're not looking at the roots of it. We're not going in and saying, well, what's there? It's just popping up, and all of a sudden these weeds are popping up. We're like, what is this? Well, it's been there all along. It's just was held within the subconscious mind, right? And I've talked about this tree diagram that I've created where the subconscious mind, right, could be the sort of the root system. And then what blossoms above is what we see in our everyday life, sort of what we see in our surroundings around us, our relationships, our interactions with the world itself. How do we interact with life? Think about that. How do you interact with life? How do you go out into the world and interact with a tree or the birds or other human beings? How do you interact with life in general? Because there's something there in the subconscious mind that's being seeded. And if it's grief and despair and we're acting and we're trying to cover it up as though it doesn't exist, then these roots, right, that are starting to grow in it will pop up eventually. And though we try to keep the cement over, so we could say that we're trying to keep a cement over our subconscious mind of grief and pain and despair. And we'll try to put this big wall. But think about flowers. Think about weeds. They literally will come through. They're strong enough to come through the cement. They break through cement. How is that possible? You see that happening in nature and you're like, whoa, look at that weed. Because it has to come out. It has to come out somehow, some way. So trying to put a brick wall to hide those emotional states doesn't work. We think it works. And then when we're in a tizzy over this stuff, we're like, what happened? Well, I was trying to be, act like my life was perfect. Your life isn't perfect. Nobody's life is perfect. So I'm going to tell you a little secret. Okay. I have been watching The Bachelorette. I never watched this show, right? I used to watch it ages ago, and then I was like, okay, I'm over it. Right? It's the same story, And for me, I don't really watch TV, but it just so happened that my mother was home and it started. And you know what happens, right? This is the natural human condition. You see one episode and you're like, darn it, now I got to watch the rest. Got to know what happens. I got to know what happens. I mean, we know what happens. It's the same storyline pretty much, but it's different people, different characters. So you gotta kind of, and then, you get to say, well, I think of this person, that person. Okay. So there's my dirty little secret. And what I started to notice about this, and I like the lady who's playing the Bachelor. I like her because she is really good at allowing people to talk about their emotional states of being. And she's with these men, right? These men are, if you saw them in life, you'd be like, nah, they're not going to cry. They're not going to, and no, they're being vulnerable. They're opening up. And why? Because she's like, I'm not going to be with someone who can't talk about their life and be real and talk about their emotional states of being. We are seeing a transformation of the healing of emotional states. And really, it's women who are supporting the men with this emotional healing Why? Because men have been made wrong to be vulnerable for their whole life. We've talked about this before. And because of that, because of this, you're wrong for feeling this way, or you shouldn't have feel, or something's wrong with you, or you're weak, or whatever they say about a man showing his emotional state of being was made wrong. So that's been covered up for the longest time, but it really hasn't, because it's impacted every relationship, believe it or not. Emotion has the power to impact the relationships that we have, the interconnections that we have with everybody. And I loved watching this because I saw these men that they didn't want to open up, but then she had the power, right? That's the beauty of a woman who is powerful and graceful and kind, to crack open, right, their heart, open up their hearts so that they can share what they've been through, so that they can heal. Now they're going to heal. This is going to be, even if these men don't end up with her, whatever it is, when they go away, there was a healing that happened for them that it's never going to go away. It's going to be with them forever. And these men have to be willing, right, to be able to do it. But I did notice one of the guys said, "I'm sorry for being vulnerable and looking weak." He associated vulnerability with weakness, and that is the problem right there. Okay. Good morning, Crystal. That is the issue right there. When you're talking about vulnerability in men and you say that that it's weak, it's not a weakness. It takes courage to talk about those things inside of us, not weakness, courage. If it was weakness, right, then everybody would be doing it. Everybody would fold and break because they would be weak. And then, no, it takes courage to open up. And that's why people hold it in, right? They're holding this in because they're afraid. It takes immense courage to open up and talk about these things that are inside of us. The Western world is crazy. I mean, it's funny because I was even watching this talk in my class, and we'll stop here for the reading, but I was watching a video, and it's a professor at Yale. And he is the director of emotional intelligence, right? The emotional intelligence. So this professor who's done research in emotional intelligence is talking to a group of individuals at Google. He does worldwide presentations on emotional intelligence. And literally, he was sitting in a room full of physicians talking about emotional intelligence, and they were just like totally shut off to it, right? And he says, they were like, "What does this have to do with my work? We just tell people what to do. Now I got to have feelings for them." This type of thinking is a Western type of thinking. It's Western thought. And this Western thought has really plagued us. And the reason why is because now people walk around as though they have no emotional states. You can't do that. It's not true. You're only living half a truth, right? If you say, "Well, I'm totally logical and rational," that's only half of it. And you can't be whole. How can you find yourself back to holism if you're only trying to live on one side of the spectrum? There's two, and those two synergize to wholeness. But people are wanting to separate it and say it's different. Well, we don't want to talk about feelings. We don't want to talk about our emotions. Are you kidding me? It's everything. It impacts every part of our life, believe it or not. But there's this mindset that's like so wrong. And it still plagues us today. Why? I mean, I've been vulnerable. I've been doing this podcast for, I don't know, 3 years, however long I've been doing it. Literally, it's all about emotions, right? The emotions. It's all about being vulnerable and open, not being afraid to completely communicate even my story, to be open and say, hey, it's okay. I hear you. I feel you. I see you. I'm with you. We're not separate. My suffering is your suffering. We're in this together, not apart. But we don't value it. And if you look at especially the academic world, where you have professors, creating all this stuff, totally dismissive of the fact that they themselves even have emotion. Like, we're not going to talk about it because it's not relevant. Oh, so you don't have emotion. How is your life, by the way? I love asking people that. They can talk all of these logics. They can talk logical models and all this scientific stuff. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, great. You have all this knowledge. Now what? So what does that mean? Who cares? Can you use it in your life? Are you happy? Do you feel like you're creating the life that you want for yourself? What does it do for you to have all this information? Are you doing what your heart desires? How do you feel? Where's your energy? Is your health good? And I can tell you that when you start digging deeper, it cracks somebody open. They start to cry and they start to tell you the truth of their life, where it's like, yeah, no, I'm not that happy. I'm not that great. I wanted to do this. And then you start to hear about their dreams and aspirations and their hopes and the things that they may have failed at and all of these things. And they open up. And now you're like, oh, there you are. Beautiful. Now what happens? A spark of inspiration, a spark of hope, a change in direction, a change of the winds, a change of the sails. The boat's headed off in another direction now, in a direction where life, I don't know, towards an island that's fruitful, abundant, not lacking. I don't know. But you can sail off. And so the emotions, right? Such a powerful thing to understand, to open up. I know people feel shameful. Shame is a big one. That was a big aha for me. Shame, just shame itself was like, wow, comes from the unworthiness of our inadequacies, of like what we don't feel like we can do. But just talking about it and opening up about it. So we all have the sickness. God is the cure, right? And we all have the cure. So really everybody can heal themselves. That's what I'm saying here, is we all have the power to heal ourselves. And that's powerful to remember that you yourself have the power to heal yourself. That's cool, right? Like, okay, so maybe we suffer, but there's a cure, and we have a cure, and we can understand the cure, and we can look at the cure, and we can cure ourselves through these dark spaces. And you're never alone. You have a guide. So amazing, okay? And the men, I wish that all the men would show up on this. Somebody would show up. I have all of 0 followers. Natalie's talking to herself this morning, which is fine. Okay. In the throes of grief, fear, despair, we generally believe that giving feelings like these too much space in our psyche is a sign of emotional weakness or breakdown. We turn away, not toward them. The enlightened Buddha saw that such aversion of suffering only worsens it. Still, for those of us who are not enlightened, when things go wrong, we want out. When we are besieged by afflictive emotions, we try to find our way around them. The last thing we want to do is go through them, even if doing so would lead us to unimaginable gifts on the other side. So even if we know that on the other side of this dark space is some beautiful gems and gifts, and we'll still do everything to avoid them. Everything. Dismiss it, avoid it, numb it out, run away, not want to face it. And another thing that the professor said that I really liked is that we don't have the language for it. That's typically why we have a hard time expressing our emotional states of being. So having language around it. Now, when I coach people, I do body work because I have them label that. The clearer that you become in your emotional states of being, the clearer that you can, the more that you can identify what it is that you're feeling, the easier it is for you to communicate and articulate. This is the power of manifestation. This is part of why I can't get on board with all of these mainstream easy fixes to manifest what you want in your life. It's not easy. It takes a lot of digging. It takes a lot of understanding, a lot of clarity. What do you even want? How do you even know that's what you want? There's tons of questions around finding out and getting focused and clear, and emotional states of being around specific domains of our life. If I talked about the domain of family, right? If I said, let's look at family, okay? Good morning, Chris. And we said, okay, well, we're going to look at family. So let's say we looked at family, we started to dig a little deeper. Well, I just, I'm trying to buy a house for my mom. I want to do these things, right? And so just as just an example, okay, but why? What's the reason behind it? And then you go into these stories, and the stories are what have led you to this thought process of why you want to do this. And there's a feeling behind it. Well, maybe when you were young, you didn't have a place to live and you were homeless and you were out on the streets and you didn't feel safe. You felt like you weren't, and there was fear, right? Now we're getting somewhere. Because when you can identify the feeling behind it, when you can identify and with clarity the emotional state of being, the way the body is feeling in this particular scenario, and you can put words to that and describe it and put descriptive words behind it, then we have the opportunity to shift it. If we don't have clarity in our words, how are we going to communicate what we want? We cannot do it. It is not possible. That's why the universe won't show up and say, oh, here. It will say, God knows my heart. Yes, that's beautiful. God knows your heart. You're absolutely correct. But also, there's this thing that if you say, I want a house, does God just drop a house in front of you? No, that's not how it works. It takes you being there's action behind your ability, your vessel. You can't just say, God, give me this, and it's going to drop. There's some action on your part that needs to be taken. Yes, I will guide you to it. That's what God says. I'll guide you to it. I will show you the way. But you've got to take the action behind it. How do you take the action if you can't even describe the feeling, what you're walking towards? You don't even know what you're feeling. You're just numb walking through life. How is that going to get you where you want to go? Your emotional states also, right? They impact the relations that you make on your journey towards that. So for instance, if you are saying, I want to get this house, but you don't even know why, you haven't really dug, you just kind of know this has always been something in your head that you want to do for your family. You know that you were homeless, but you don't really know where the feeling really came from, the emotional state of being that triggered this type of action. And perhaps you're frustrated at the individuals, right, that are helping you because they've never experienced what you have. They don't really get your point of view. And that interaction goes sour. Because why? Because you couldn't hone in and take personal responsibility for why you were feeling this way. In other words, what I'm saying is your state of being will impact the outcome for you. Those emotional states that you bring to any conversation, situation, or relationship will change the outcome that you get. That's the process of manifestation as well. It's not just thinking it, it's how you engage it. How do you move through it? So it's like this. Okay, when I was young, I was homeless. I felt like I was insecure. I didn't feel safe. And I was worried. I felt really terrible about my mom. So where did I feel it? I felt it in my gut. It made me want to throw up because I saw my mom crying every night, right? This is not a true story, by the way. I was not homeless, but I'm just giving you an example. I threw up, right? I wanted to throw up because I could see I could feel my mom's pain, and the pain felt like in my heart. And if I put a word on it, I would say that I felt like my mom didn't feel like she was worthy, and I felt helpless. Okay. So helpless is important to understand. That's the dark emotion that drove the action to you wanting to get a house for your mother later on in life. Okay. So do you feel helpless now? Well, yeah, because I'm not able to do it. I don't know how. And so now I feel helpless. Now we have something to work with. Okay. So, what helps you through helplessness? You have to go through the entire process of saying, well, it feels like this. Well, if you were experiencing something else, what would it be? Supportive, not helpless, but supportive. Okay, so how can you support your mom now? Is there ways you can support your mom now? Yeah, I could do this, 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 this. Okay, cool. Now we're getting somewhere. Now you're engaging the mother, right? Maybe it's not a house. Maybe there's different ways that it shows up. If the house is the goal, cool. But it may not even be that anymore. It may not even be this thing that you thought it was. And who knows, even the conversation with your own mother could change, right? You could go to your mom and say, I felt helpless. I felt this. And your mom says, oh my God, you know what? I appreciate that. But you know what? I'm good. Like, I love where I'm at. I don't want to move. I love where I'm at. I'm good. I want you to do well for yourself. I want you to go out and I want you to be successful. I found my success. You don't know what the story's going to be, right? And then you say, oh, okay, boom. And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I was focusing on this when that's not even really what I needed to focus on. You change the focus. Okay, so what? What is it then? I felt helpless. So how do I feel empowered? Maybe I want to get a house for myself. Maybe I want to, again, the story changes. But unless you can tap into the deep, dark emotion, if your patterns are going to repeat like this, you're going to be a dog chasing your tail. You're going to keep trying different things and the same outcome over and over again. Guarantee it. You're going to be, why am I getting the same results? Why do the same characters keep showing up in my life? Why is it always this? Why is it that every time I do this, this happens? And people just walk around numbed out. And they're like, you know what? I can't handle it no more. I've tried to do that. It's not working. And I've tried. You're beating your head on the table. You're going in circles. And the reality is that you are not allowing yourself to go through the pain so that you can get to the other side. It's almost like you're going from one pattern to the other. You're like, I'm going through this pattern so that I can get to the pattern over here. That's a different pattern seated in something different. And I can change the storyline. Maybe different characters show up. Okay. All right, so I hope this is helpful. We're going to continue through the dark emotions. I'm going to continue to read through the book, ever long it takes me. It's probably going to take me forever because, I guys talk after. But if you have questions or if you want to read the book, again, it's Healing Through Dark Emotions, The Wisdom, Grief, and Fear, and Despair by Miriam Greenspan. And it's on Alchemy Through Dark Emotions, okay? So there you have it. All right, so I love you guys. I will see you guys tomorrow. I'm going to try to get on earlier. It was a hectic day already in the morning. Already did all kinds of stuff. Okay, plus Kundalini. There you go. Okay, so I just cracked myself up. Okay, love you guys. Have the best day ever, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.